Hey guys, Andrew Dowling here and Mitch Kurtz. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the AltMed podcast.
Make sure to hit like and subscribe because we've got heaps more content coming out and it's really fun and great and we love it all.
Also very good.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the AltMed podcast. Andrew Dowling here, with me as always, my co-host Mitch. How you doing, Mitch?
G'day, happy to be here as per usual.
Perky as always. We have a very special guest today, someone who I would describe just purely from a cursory LinkedIn review of his profile to be somewhat of a bit of a connoisseur and an expert by Australian standards, given his near 20 years in the industry of cannabis, various places around the world. But it is none other than Robert Collier, the founder and director of Genetics. Rob, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, gents.
And as we said at the outset, this is intended, like all AltMed episodes, to be a nice little fireside chat. And I can see that both you and Mitch have a wall of whiskey behind you. So if you felt inclined, you can always have a dram if the questions get a little bit too intense from our side. But great to have you with us. Before we dive in, just a big shout out to all of our listeners. We really appreciate everyone that tunes in for this podcast. And, you know, feel free to spread the love, tell people about it. And if you are kind of new to AltMed, please remember to hit like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Rob, I'm going to let you do this first bit. Can you take us through your near 20 years working in and around cannabis in various continents? And we'll follow the journey and then we'll pick it apart and throw some questions at you.
Okay, yeah, pretty much I've been working with medicinal cannabis for close on near 20 years now. I started my career originally in Amsterdam. I lived and operated there for a number of years up until about 2007. Then I done a stint in Spain for a bit, went back up to Amsterdam and then decided to move over to Australia. So I moved over to Australia in about 2009, spent a few years here. I've traveled back and forth then to I've lived and operated in Colorado for a while. I lived and operated in California for a while, Detroit, Canada, Toronto. And then, yes, we've also been down in Uruguay for a while as well. We would never recommend anyone going to Uruguay. Avoid that.
I was going to say, you made it to Australia a little bit early if you were here in 2009. What was it like kind of coming from the hustle and bustle of Cannabis conference in Spain and, you know, the whole scene in Amsterdam, and then kind of coming to the backwaters of Australia at that time and going, geez, I don't know if medical cannabis is ever going to be a thing in this country?
Honestly, yes. When I did come here first, that was my impression on it. So I was thinking, like, because look at when working in that and living in Holland, there was one thing that we used to have a lot of people that would kind of travel around, and we'd always be hearing stories about Australia that had these fantastic aromas, smells, and tastes that you didn't have anywhere else. And we were kind of going, there was a few kind of things held in Holland at the time, and the consensus was that the best smells, tastes, and aromas did originate from Australia. Okay, that was what was there, and that was what my love and where I was kind of going, you know what, I gotta get down there and kind of see what's going on.
Are we still talking about cannabis?
No,
yes.
We're talking about the sweet scent of 4X, Melbourne Bitter.
Sweat.
Well, yeah, exactly. But obviously, and a lot of people seem to forget this in the medical scene, but there were quite a few guerrilla grows, for want of a better term, happening in Australia back then. But were you hearing about that kind of black market product? Did black market cannabis from Australia from around that time actually have some kind of international profile or following?
Well, it did, of course, yes. Like, look, Neville had a huge influence on that kind of aspect as well. And obviously Shanti Baba himself too. They kind of propelled that along in an awful lot of aspects. Per se, but yeah, no, there was always Australia always had its own little element, and everybody knew what Australia was doing. Back in Europe, even in 2005, 2006, 2007.
My understanding was the guys like that, Shanti and Neville were obviously pioneers, but I mean, they were really working with a lot of plants from, Afghanistan and India and these kinds of places. The only one that I have heard of that had that legendary status back in the day was Mullumbimby Madness.
Yeah.
But in terms of anything else having notoriety from Australia, I'm not aware of specific strains, so to speak. But I'd love to hear if there were any others, because I wasn't around back. I was around back in the 2000s, but prior to 88, which is when I was born, and Andrew,
but you announced yourself in it, but by 1989, Mitch was huge into the
I was a connoisseur from secondhand smoke. But
pretty much what it was, there was a few guys that were kind of putting together some books back then, and they'd actually done a tour around the world. It was I believe one of them was it'll come to me in a minute. Oh, there it is. The Cannabis, the Canna Bible Collection. So that's a good book for a couple of people to look up. There was originally 3 very large hard copies in them, and there was a guy that would go around and he would spend some time in different regions, and he spent some time in Australia. And his general consensus from coming back was that some of the most amazing flavors, tastes, and aromas he'd had anywhere in the world had come from different regions of Australia.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I know those guys were, collecting seed and hybridizing them. So it would make sense, actually, that existed in Australia in some corners of different states. But I guess. So did it live up to the hype once you got here?
Look, when I came here, first of all, it wasn't what I was led to believe. If I'm to be completely honest about it.
Very diplomatic.
From about we finished school in 2006. From about then onwards, there were really only 2 options as far as I was aware for a long time, and that was bush or hydro, and that was it. That was the foray of cannabis in Australia as far as I was aware. Obviously we're in a different place now, but I imagine once you've come from a place like Amsterdam or Spain or with very advanced markets, and then you get to Australia and they're like, what cannabis do you have? They're like, what do you mean? I've got cannabis. I got weed. It's weed. And you're like, oh, but what is it? And like, it's weed.
That's it.
So you would have, I imagine, been a little bit lackluster in your enthusiasm for it down here when you arrived.
I have to say, when I did kind of get up to Queensland and all the rest of it, we did come across some things that were a little bit unique. As well, like for us, we're always kind of looking for something that's got a new flavor, taste, or aroma anyway. Like I said, when you're looking to breeding, you're looking to select or something, that's what you're always looking for. Is nowadays, like 80% of cannabis is all homogenous, it all looks the same, grows the same, it's got a slightly bit different of a smell to it. So really, that's it. Like an awful lot of those older strains is what people are looking for now as well.
Yeah. I mean, I was having this conversation with somebody the other day. Like, obviously, as cannabis becomes more commercialized, people are looking for price per gram. Like, these are the things that drive. So, you're really looking at 7-8 week flower times. You're looking at Kush, skunk, very heavy hitters. Like it, and the only thing that seems to change is a little bit of that flavor profile. Is it more floral? Is it more earthy? Is it more woody? Yeah. Like your usual suspects, and I agree with you. It's becoming a lot of the same kind of thing over and over again, and you're missing some of these unique hybrids that maybe take 12 or 13 or 14 or 16 weeks to grow, and nobody grows them because you can't make money out of that because it's just too uncommercial to add another 30% of your harvest cycle, and not to mention they might not be high yielding, things like this. So I agree with you. There's plenty of people looking for something different, but what are we going to do, Rob? How are we going to get that?
Oh, well, look, if I had my way, I'd be growing different varieties from the north to the south here in Australia, wouldn't I? Yeah. Because what we could grow up in, as we said, the Northern Territory and the rest of it, would be completely different than what we could grow down in Melbourne and South Australia. So by right, really, Australia could be bringing back all of those lost varieties that nobody has seen in about 40 or 50 years. That's really as to what I would love to see Australia kind of properly being on the market, to really put his finger down as a medicinal cannabis leader kind of going forward. Like that, one thing we do have is the space. That's one thing for sure. We have the space, and down here we've got really keen and really knowledgeable people as well to kind of push that forward. And as well, an awful lot of our farmers here too, I reckon they'd love the opportunity of to start kind of breeding some of these and growing some of these varieties that would be we can find a region here that's pretty close to Afghanistan. We can find a region here that's pretty close to Thailand. So what more do we want, really? So if I had my way, that's what I'd be trying to do anyway.
Yeah, but even on top of that, I mean, not most, but a lot of the flower that, is now commercially available is indoor or controlled greenhouse anyway. So yes, I take your point, and it will grow better in those regions, depending if it's sativa, indica, blah, blah, blah. But I think that even currently, I mean, they're growing all sorts of cannabis in Canada, and that is not a native region for cannabis.
I know.
You can work magic even with or without, but we do have the benefit of the climate, the latitude differences, all those kinds of things, the humidity up north and the relative dryness down south to be able to take advantage of that. What do you think's stopping that currently?
What can we say? I suppose, really, there needs to be an awful lot more investment into the industry as well. Like I said, we don't have a huge amount of Australian producers at the moment. We do have a huge amount of product being imported from overseas. So I believe if we were kind of pushing that around more for homegrown products and pushing as in Australia to start creating its own unique range of products, I think might start pushing that in the right direction that we need it to be, rather than it's just trying to mimic what everybody else is trying to do everywhere else.
But arguably, there's been quite a bit of investment in Australian cultivation, but potentially it hasn't gone the way that it could have gone.
It could have gone, yeah.
Had we, had different people pushing some of that. Not all of it. I think there is some good stuff coming out of Australia, but obviously,
of course, yeah.
The sums of money that have been invested into cultivation in Australia, I would argue there should be more to show for that.
Oh, look, I agree with you. Yeah, in certain areas, of course, it should be. Yes.
What are people or what are companies missing in terms of the expertise in setting up a cultivation? As far as I'm aware, most people seem to think that, if you've got the cash, it'll be, and, a couple of good growers, that's all you need. But is there a little bit more to it from your experience?
Look, as far as I'm concerned, the most main thing that you want is consistency in your product. Is to make sure that what you're pumping out today is the exact same thing that you're pumping out next week, next month, and 6 months down along the line. And as well, so that there's not actually a variance in the product. That's where I think is as to what you need. And as well, patients need, if they're having a product and they find it actually works for them, and then they're finding that, oh no, that's not available anymore, now they've got to find something else. I kind of feel that kind of pushes us back a little bit as well.
What though, in terms of, I guess, having been in Amsterdam for a few years, doing some work in North America, even being part of research projects in Ireland, are there any facets of the, I guess, the legal environment or the regulatory environment in Australia that you think is working well, that, is, I guess, makes Australia a leader? Or do you think that we've kind of missed our opportunity, at least for now, to do it the right way?
Look, I believe the way Australia is trying to implement it is the correct way to go about it. And essentially, for instance, look, we have to be real, they look at it and go, okay, our product has to be to a certain standard for it to go out. We got our TGO 800s and we got everything else we need to make sure. Yeah, it ticks out through all the boxes. Look, as they are more hoops to jump through, I do truly believe that is what's best for the industry in the long run. So it is a little bit harder now for us to kind of get it in together and be making sure that we're meeting all of those standards. But when we're actually looking to be a world leader of that in this area, that's everything that we're going to need to be doing. And as much and all as it kind of, I find it paying for myself, it's what we need to be doing.
Well, it creates a kind of high barriers to entry, whereas from what I understand, in quite a few states throughout the US, for example, you know, you can have a fairly, I guess, like, how would I say, from what I've hear, it's people of low skill or just mum and dads who are hobby gardeners can basically set up a cultivation site. They don't have all the rigor of ODC regulations to kind of come up against, and then they can, I guess, supply to someone bigger up the chain, and these sorts of similar, I guess, to our wine industry to some extent.
Yeah, with the States, it's not really difficult to kind of get up and kind of going. As well, at the same time as, look, we do a lot of testing with products that we do in the States. And as well, some of the cleanliness that we come across a lot of the time is nowhere near what it should be.
Right.
And some of the pathogens and the molds and the funguses that you find, it's like, look at when you're giving something like that to somebody that always has a compromised immune system already, and you're giving them something that's not perfect. Well, I don't think that should be happening either. I get it. Sure, I believe that people should be allowed to consume maybe their own product at home and to produce it themselves. And get me, that's what they're going forward to do, their own cleanliness in mind. But yeah, when it actually comes to a proper medical product, we're putting into a bottle, we're putting a label on it, we're saying it's A, B, C, and D, and we believe it should be effective for A, B, C, and D. And then not reaching the standards afterwards, I believe they're big potholes that people fall into.
Were the standards good in Amsterdam? Like, what's your recollection from your time there? Was it, because you would have had a mix of, it being a famous kind of capital or place for cannabis, and then, so you have all these cannabis tourists that are there, but then you've equally, I saw on your LinkedIn that you were part of trials for helping people that had a genuine requirement for it as a medicine over there. Like, what was your take on the European cannabis scene?
Look, pretty much it was a scenario as to whether or not you were working for a licensed company that was doing some research and was actually building a facility to ensure it met all the standards it was supposed to meet, or as to whether it was just, somebody that could have been producing a product to sell it directly to a coffee shop. So, like I said, some of those people would do an awful lot of things, but at the same time as well, there was, the market over there never really had a huge amount of regulation around it back then. It was simply a case of, it was more around, what the punishment was when people were being caught with the product more than setting it up in the first place to make sure it was correct. Now, so I've worked with a number of pharmaceutical companies over the years. Obviously they take a much different approach to it than and usually they went to the extent of a full clean room environment. So pretty much you were wearing a hazmat suit to actually go in and even deal with the plants in any way, shape, or form. Their preferred method of doing things was to build full, complete computerized grow rooms. So we would kind of go in once to actually set it up, and then we wouldn't come back in again until we were actually harvesting the product. Wow. And then, that was it. It was whether it would be a 10 kilos or 50 kilos to send off for a trial. And that trial would be involved of anywhere from 50 to 250 people over a 3-month period to see if a particular variety will be effective for treating such conditions. Now, some of those were successful, some of them weren't successful, but that was generally as to how they kind of wanted it around to make sure that the product was as clean as it could possibly be.
Yeah. I mean, the Dutch are kind of renowned, I suppose, for agricultural technology and flowering rooms and these sorts of things. So that doesn't surprise me. I'm sure we'll start to see some of that technology making its way to cultivation facilities in Australia in the not too distant future. But I just want to quickly, while we're in Amsterdam for a moment, can you talk us through, I guess, were there any particular strains? I don't know if you had any contact with like cannabis cups or things like this, but what were some of the memorable strains that you were working on from that time?
I suppose some of our own personal favorites of what we've created and worked with over the years was lemon skunk would obviously be one of them. Chuck, the lemon man, is a friend of mine from Colorado. He brought the original citrus lemon over to Amsterdam. At the time, I was only a young fellow, I was only kind of working in the industry where I could. And he brought the original cut to DNA Genetics. At the time, we were making seeds for DNA, and we worked out an agreement between the Cannabis College and DNA Genetics where we would actually cross the original skunk with the citral lemon, which then is what's known today as lemon skunk, which is still a very, very good, powerful variety, as we like to say.
Yeah, I've spoken to people that have had that strain, and from all accounts, they seem to have enjoyed it. So, yeah, okay, so you were part of that team that did the original. So, I am actually now just turning my mind to whether or not that strain is available in Australia, but I think
actually, it is actually available through through one of the Canadian producers. DNA Genetics had sold off their arms of their company to a couple of companies in Canada. And lemon skunk was one of the varieties there. Look, at the reason it's still kind of quite popular around the world is that it holds up well to the gamma radiation treatment. So it still has to hold a good terpene profile after that, which makes it really good then for shipping around the world.
You've just thrown me a little bit there. Is lemon skunk different to citral skunk?
Yes, just they are a little bit different. Yes.
Yeah, because you were saying he brought the citral genetics. I was just
it was the citral that was brought over from the Las Vegas lemon. The citral brought over from Las Vegas to Holland in what have been about 2006, 2007, I believe.
Goodness me. It's just the thought of how easy it would have been to do that compared to when you speak to cultivators in Australia and the time it takes to import genetics under a medicinal cannabis license. I've heard in some cases, they can have clones or genetics being kept by Border Force for longer than a year, kind of thing. So it's interesting. I think that's definitely a side of, but maybe you're familiar with that through your Ma Genetics. But yeah, talk to us actually about Ma Genetics. Like, when did that start? What's the what are you working on, and what's the goal for it?
So look, Ma Genetics, we were founded back in about 2015 originally. So we've got some international people, myself, and then I've got a couple of other bankers and accountants that have kind of helped me get this together and put things where it needs to be, as per se. Our goal is we have a vast library of genetics. So we do that kind of expands across modern hybrids, landrace varieties, some really old genetics, and some as well. Then in Spain we still have one of our old original libraries. Some of those varieties are still some of the original clones that we were operating in out of Holland and Amsterdam. So that are still around today. We still have some of those really old, really long flowering sativas. Some of them will take 18 to 22 weeks to flower, which, once again, with all of those things, it's really about cannabinoids to us, as to what other cannabinoids we can find, what's rare, what's rare terpenes, and the rest, And our goal has always been then to start bringing these varieties, these genetics to Australia.
And is that going to be through, I guess, a project where you would have a physical nursery site in Australia, or would the goal be to just kind of have them all grown overseas and just import them as and when they're ordered?
So look, we're looking at doing both things. At the moment, we have a genetic library overseas that we import to people in accordance with different companies as they want. But at the same time, our long-term vision here is to have a full-scale nursery with all of these different varieties available. Like I said, some of them, our focus is on, as you'd have all of your natural hybrids that everybody loves and adores, but also as well as to kind of focus on some more cannabinoid heavy varieties, or some more that could be unique terpenes and the rest of it. So we can start to do some trials and the rest of it over here on that, to try and kind of push the industry a little bit forward as well.
Amazing. Do you think people are going to come back to try to grow land races in Australia? It's a pretty hard job. Some of those beasts from.
Some of them are, look, some of them are. Some of them can be very, very difficult to grow. But as well, at the same time, is like some of the landrace varieties that we have are, they grow within about anywhere between 8 to 12 weeks. They've got a THC content of anywhere between 23 to 27%. You've got some terpene profiles that are completely and utterly unique. as well as being quite large producers here as well.
And sorry, just to jump in. So the actual contents though of the Mar Genetics library, is this just, I guess, a collection that you've been building over time from your various, working stints around the world, or is this something that you acquired from somewhere, or like how did you come to be?
Oh, well, look, pretty much, yeah. Some things are what I've connected myself, and some things is what I've acquired as well. It's like, like anything that we got in Amsterdam is obviously everything that's kind of been handed down to us over the years. You know what I mean? I wasn't around when everything was originally created. I'm not that old yet. So yeah, as I said, like I have to be thankful for the people that came before me for us with the opportunities that I got after that.
No, for sure. Well, there's, it's only been around for a few thousand years, so there's a few people to thank in that.
That's it, yeah.
It is one of those cultures though that got handed down by the person before them to the other. Like it was always in the shadows, and well, at least in the last 100 years, and it required that knowledge kind of transferal to exist, at least in an artisan kind of capacity. Do you think we're at risk of losing that, or do you still see a healthy community of people kind of passing the gauntlet to the next generation?
Look, I still see a healthy number of people kind of passing it along. So I do. And like, there's an awful lot of knowledge there. And most of these guys, they really, really want to make sure that knowledge gets out. And once again, they're always looking for good people to kind of work with and move with in the future as well. It's, as far as I'm concerned, look, there's obviously with anything, there's an awful lot of things that are going to be lost. And that's what we see with regards to homogenization of cannabis. I said, but at the same time, I think that's going to be also what could be the spark to maybe start growing a few of these things that we don't see anymore.
I do think though, Mitch, like, kind of conjures up imagery of like Gandalf inspiring Bilbo and, you shall take this Mullumbimby madness and go forth and cultivate, but these days
with a similar pipe to actually what he
yeah, exactly. But I think these days more interest from academic circles and everything. But yeah, there is this huge knowledge transfer piece. So, and out of interest with Mar Genetics, are you working with any research projects at the moment in the private sector or academic, or what's?
We are, yes. Yeah, look, a couple of things we're doing at the moment is we're just simply searching for cannabinoids. So yeah, we are growing out a few of these landrace varieties in Spain currently, doing large scale growth on it then to actually extract it down to see exactly as to what we can find in there. So it's like, look, we're kind of we have 10 kilos of a product, and then we find we've got like maybe 50 or 100 milligrams of a particular cannabinoid in there. So look, I love that. That's the I'm kind of always find interesting. And then it's to see us, okay, what's this cannabinoid do? What could be effective for? What can we try and use it for? That they're all kind of long-term things, but that's little bits and pieces I really enjoy.
Can we because this is the thing, I think sort of even 3 years ago, people weren't generally familiar with anything beyond, say, THC, CBD, but now we have, of course, CBN, CBC, CBL. But I'm just curious, perhaps for both Mitch and I, but also for our audience, we hear all the time about this, there's potentially more than 120 odd cannabinoids in the plant. Can you take us to some obscure cannabinoids that we've never heard of before?
Oh, look, I can. Honestly, we had one variety where we found about, I think it was like 54 different cannabinoids in it.
Wow.
It was, like,
look, that was a landrace, was it?
Yes, a landrace variety. Look, it only contained about maybe 6 or 7% CBD. There wasn't actually much in it. But the long scale of it, we ended up with about 53, 54 different cannabinoids in total.
And I assume that includes like the analogs and everything, but like
we normally say that because we don't even have the capacity to test all of them, like I usually say where there's smoke, there's fire. Like it's highly possible there's even more that we're not even aware of, or we don't have the ability or standards to test, rather, if that makes sense.
Yeah, look at this. Yeah, I even like when you look at the guys over in the States with some of the recent studies that they've done, like I said, some things have found 40,000 different chemical compounds inside of a sample. So when you start to think about it that way, you're kind of going like, yeah, how much is actually in one of these varieties?
Can you hit us?
What is the actual full potential of it? And where is it actually kind of going to go? Like, yeah, they're the bits like I get kind of excited about, to be honest.
Can you hit us with some cannabinoids we've never heard of?
Yeah, that's pretty. I'm just looking for the I'm just looking for my list right now.
You could just make them up, like we wouldn't know.
Yeah, it could start with CB and then finish with a letter that no one.
Yeah, just
Okay, CBDT, CBDDD.
CBQ497341.
There's a various amounts of different THCs, CBL, CBLA, CBLCD,
THCBD.
We were just overseas now, and obviously you're seeing a few of these other ones. HHC on the market. It's kind of being sold as a very strong version of.
But is that synthetic? That's
it's like a modified THC that doesn't have any. It doesn't have any kind of status in the EU, so people sell it as something you can just buy, but it's very strong, and I think maybe up to 50 times stronger than THC, and it's really hitting people pretty hard, and highly recommended to have very small amount if you even can be bothered having it. But
I mean, that alone though, that situation that you're just painting the picture of is reason enough that access to adult use should just be regulated.
Well,
they're always the unintended consequences of putting up a big brick wall and saying no. Is somebody finds a way around it with something possibly more dangerous?
It's kind of
an untenable situation for a regulator, I would have thought.
It's kind of what happened with Delta 8 a little while ago, where there was kind of this loophole they got through. And it's not a new thing. Like, we see it in other drugs. We've seen it in opioids and stuff like fentanyl, and just people modifying molecules and bringing out a more insane version of the original product. But coming back to Rob, have you found anything in there yet?
I do, yes. Okay, so what we've got CBCF, we've got CBF, we got CBR, CBT, DCBF, cis THC. What else have we got here? Hold on. CBTV.
Are you sure you can trust it? You know, if the guy comes back and says CBF, like, I would have thought. Yeah, mate, I tested it. Oh, CBF. And he's like,
look at it. Yeah, it takes us a long time with a couple of the labs that we're working with. And as well, like, it usually takes a vast amount of product to actually concentrate it down to start finding a few of these. Other than that, and as well, like, we don't, honestly, with all the time and the money that we've kind of put into it, a lot of these modern hybrids, we might find a few, but we don't find anything anywhere near as what we do when we start looking into these.
Do you know what's even better than doing just the letter readout is trying to say the names of some of these? I'll raise you one, Rob, because I've just got a list in front of me here, courtesy of the hempgazette.com, the big list of cannabis cannabinoids. We've got here one that I'm going to try to pronounce that is, okay, wish me luck here. Okay, so we've got connected to CBD, the cannabidiols. We have cannabidivarinic acid, CBDVA.
Yeah.
We've got...
That's old news though, mate. That's old news.
Mate, CBDC1 is cannabidiol. Bet you haven't heard of that, Mitch, even though you say you have.
Yeah, we're all mates.
CBR, cannabidiol.
CBR, I'm not familiar with, actually. So, yeah.
There's one called cannabiglendol. Anyway, we'll have to send that list around. You can cross how many of those.
Like a bank that funds cannabis.
That'd be good. You know what? That'd be really good. If we had a bank that could fund cannabis, that'd be good.
Yeah, there's a few of those missing.
Yeah.
No, but it's interesting. I mean, what about on the terp side? Did you also do terp tests for canaflavins?
Yes, yes. So yeah, I suppose like in that we've found about 160 is what we've got properly documented. Now, as well, like, look, we've also found another number of bunches of oils that we don't know what they are. Like, that's the truth. We've also found an awful lot of stuff we have no clue what it is. It's what it actually does, what it is, we don't know. We just have the kind of structure of what it is, and that's all we know about.
I wonder. So, interesting. How do you go about actually deciphering? Like, did you get to name new stuff, or like, how does that work if you do discover a new compound?
Oh, well, look, it's not that it's a new, I don't believe it's a new compound. I believe somebody else may have discovered it. It's just, hasn't been documented anywhere. So that's it. Like, yeah, I don't believe that they are.
You've got to get in there quickly then, don't you?
Yeah.
That's
yeah. We're like, that's it. We're going, what does it do? No. Well,
Cannabis Collier
has little smell to it, and we have a minuscule amount of it. What's it for? We don't know. We put a flame to it, it's gone.
Cannabis Collier. That's
CBDCO, I believe, is the technical name.
What will that do for you?
No, that's awesome.
Gives you a weird accent at the end of the day.
We have, I think we've touched on this topic on our podcast before, Mitch, if I'm not mistaken, but we've talked about how, I guess to your point, Rob, being able to actually map the complexity of a given strain is something that perhaps the tools that we currently have are not actually up to that task. So, for example, flavonoid compounds, as far as Mitch and I are aware, there's no labs in Australia that test for flavonoids. And I'm not sure to what extent such labs exist overseas. I have heard that they do, but I don't know if they're few and far between or commonplace in the US or Europe. But have you come across anything, any labs that test for that?
Yeah, pretty much just flavonoid A and flavonoid B. That's pretty much kind of all we kind of really have at the moment out of any of the labs that we really work with. Like, look, at the same time as well, you've always got kind of people that are trying to upgrade and trying to find new things. So, like, yeah, every time we're hoping that every few months that there's something else new available. But that's pretty much that's all we've detected so far anyway. That's it. Like, look, I've heard stories, I've been told things, but unless I can kind of see it repeated, I'm not quite sure whether it's true or not.
Yeah, totally. And how often do you now, I know you've set up MAR Genetics, you've been in Australia. I think we can call you now a full-blown Aussie citizen, but do you get over to Europe quite a bit every year to see what's happening abroad with developments in this area, or have you kind of been staying put here in Australia to really get MAR Genetics off the ground?
Look, it's been a little bit of a combination of A and B, because everything that we're doing in Europe kind of has pushed forward MA over here as well. So, look, honestly, I kind of get back to Europe maybe every 3 months. Usually when we've trying to breed a new variety, or we've done a new trials and we're trying to check something out. I'm kind of going back, okay, what's the results? What we're looking at here? Or look at as well. I love doing selection work, so I go back to Spain to do a bit of that for a few weeks too. So yeah,
nice. Are you an annual visitor to the Cannabis conference? Is that
I am, of course. Yes. Yeah. It's one of the easiest places to catch up with my old friends. You know what I mean? Instead of having to drop all around Europe to see them, we can all just meet each other at the one spot, talk about what's going on in the future, and I can tell them how great Australia is and everything that they're missing.
just writing down a note actually here on my end, Mitch and Andrew to go to Cannabis 2024.
Yeah, and he tells
it's definitely worth a visit, boys.
He tells them all the amazing stuff going on in Australia, and then they get over and he's like, "Gotcha!"
Right, amazing. No, that's great, Mitch. Any more interrogation for Rob, or can we let him go?
I think
I'm in no hurry, boys.
No, it's good. I think that obviously there's a lot of experience there. I'm curious to know what interface you've had with kind of that. I see it as a different scene, that the kind of North American scene, the US, Canadian kind of thing, and then the European thing, which you've obviously spent more time in. Yeah, can you comment much on what's going on in America and Canada genetically versus kind of what's happens in Europe or Amsterdam or Spain?
Yeah, love it. Everything that, all the guys that I kind of work with in the States, their kind of main focus is on how much THC can we get out of this variety. Like that's kind of always been kind of the concentration as to how high we can get it, how quickly we can do it, and as to how much we can actually grow in that 1 meter squared or that 100 or 10,000 meter squared area that we've actually got. As well, like is an awful lot of focus over there is like is all of these kind of fruity fruity palettes, fruity flavors as well. Like, I love once again, the American market is much more focused on an oil-based product, while everything that we're kind of doing in Europe is more towards a hash or a resin-based product when they're actually doing. So hence why we've usually got a good mix between the varieties that could be happening in the States or what people are actually looking for in Europe. Yeah, an awful lot of it does cross over. Yeah, you've always got a demand for some of those same 5 varieties that you find everywhere across the States. But yeah, like in Europe, I do find there's a bit more of a variance than what I do when I'm kind of going through the States.
Yeah. What do you think Australians resonate with? Because seems to be like a good mix of people who are kind of more effects driven, which I would call more European, and other people who are more flavor driven, which I would say is more North American. If I'm not that it's not in Europe, but it's like people are very concerned with like fruity and flavors and things that taste like different foods. I find
foods that seems to be the go-to at the moment is America. But look, it's not what you kind of notice when you kind of watch it, and it just goes in a cycle, and it kind of you get all of this flavor, the potency kind of tapers off a little bit, and then the flavor starts to fade away and all the potency starts to come back, and it's this kind of cycle that kind of keeps going around every few years in the States. But in Europe, once again, as you said, it is more kind of about the effects and more about the longevity of it, because it has always been more of for everything to kind of do in Holland, you've always had the basis of your medical product, whether you wanted to get it from the pharmacy or whether you had a choice to go down and get it from the coffee shop has always been there. And so, an awful of those effects based, and as well then is the amount of different resins and hashes that were coming into Amsterdam from all around the world as well, which were some of them were based as pure medical products. So there's always been that little bit of a more history in it in Europe, I find from my experience anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I'm much a huge fan of more the hash charis kind of thing. I feel like that hasn't really taken off down here yet. I think it exists, but it's not really. I don't know. I do see it as more of a hand in hand with a smoking type of product as opposed to a medical product, even though it is a medical product by nature. I think that people, the way they use it or the ritual of, putting it in a tobacco, that's very European kind of thing. And
very European.
And I just don't know that I would have thought before medical that Australians were like that, but it doesn't seem to have translated as far as I can see.
No, it hasn't. And look, I honestly kind of put that. I do personally speaking. I look at the amount of medical varieties that are here available at the moment, and there is a big American influence on it. So it is, and I do find that, as much as I hate to kind of admit it, but we got to be realistic. The Californian market does play a big influence on kind of what happens here in Australia as well. Like, whatever seems to be big over there, you see people looking for it and calling out for them on this side. But like I said, with me, with regards, as far as like a hash-based product, I think is a more holistic, more round-based actual medication, based on it when you're kind of taking it out into an oil, you're extracting out. It's not as so much of an entourage effect that you get from an actual hash-based product that has everything in it. So I do, because the only thing that you're kind of taking away is just the plant material. And look, the reality of it is that you go back through civilizations. We are the first civilization to actually be consuming the green plant material. Everything before us was all a hash-based product. And yeah, and I believe hence why you see when the markets open up. First of all, there's a heavy consumption on the flower, but then it starts to move more and more towards the oils and the hashes as a more mature market starts to come into place. And we're starting to see that in the Australian market now as well, as it starts to move towards a lot of the oils to be vaped and starts to kind of eat into that flower market.
Yeah, it was interesting when I was talking to Shanti about it. He was saying that the kind of hash or charis was a much more interesting way. Well, it was more reflective of the crop rather than smoking or vaping, should I say, a specific, an individual plant. You'd basically get the overall impression of the crop, if that made sense, because you're taking a little from each plant and kind of getting it all together, which I thought was more interesting or arguably more consistent, at least with the true kind of intention of that grow. Because if you're just having an individual plant, I'm sure there is a lot of consistency, but you might get an outlier in the bunch that had a different kind of response to the conditions, or got attacked by pests a bit more, or got less sunlight, more humidity. It is possible. It was in the shade of another plant or whatever it is, you know what I mean? So
Yes.
I thought that was an interesting observation that I hadn't considered before, and I would like to see more of that coming back to Australia, but I'm not sure that the selection or range here is really all that interesting, or it's not competitive like the flower market, let's say.
Yeah. No, I would agree. But as you said, those, when you're doing a large field crop like that, each one was what it was producing of that year. Hence why, but 1 year's hash crop could be really good, better than the next year's hash crop, depending on how soon it was harvested, the weather and the temperature and the climate and everything of that year. As I said, different temperatures and climates are going to make different cannabinoids and different terpenes pop out, and that's kind of what we're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely.
So those freaks, those mutants, they're the ones that we're always looking for as a special guy, as we say. That's the one we want to do a little bit of breeding with. Let's see what happens. The freaks.
Mutant strain. That's what we want.
That's it. They're the ones we want. They're the ones we're looking for. And the ones
Absolutely.
that kind of strive through all of that struggle.
And so I'm not sure if you're allowed to tell us, but any mutant strains hanging around the Margenetics kind of district?
Oh, we have we have a few different things that kind of pop out.
I've heard there's a few freaks there.
Yeah, there's definitely a few freaks there. There's no question about that. But living and working in Holland for a long time.
So what about the strains?
we got a couple that look, I suppose the Champagne Haze will be definitely a supreme one of ours. So that definitely has its own completely unique terpene profile. We find that one has a kind of its own little market area. As well, then there's a couple of things from Sudan I have kind of found have been really interesting. Some of the smells and aromas that have come out of there is something I have never smelled anywhere else. A couple of, believe it or not, Uruguay is where I found one of the most unique profiles I've seen anywhere in the world. So it is, So yes, the South American, Mexican varieties as well, they kind of throw out some terpenes and some flavors that I just can't seem to mimic anywhere else either.
Are you saying Australia doesn't have the most interesting aromas on the face of the planet?
Oh, look, I reckon, right, that Australia was growing an awful lot of these South American varieties. I'd say Australia would have its own unique terpenes.
Yeah. Okay.
I reckon Australia finds some things that have never been seen before. That'd be my opinion. As well, like with the ozone layer and the way it actually works here too. It just kind of gives the plant that extra little bit of harshness it doesn't get anywhere else.
Yeah.
Did you say Sudan?
Sudan, yeah.
What can you actually elaborate on that? I'm not familiar too much with the Sudanese cannabis scene.
So the Sudanese variety is what we call it's kind of a semi-auto flowering variety. It's not auto flowering, but in daylight time it'll flower automatically whenever it feels like it, to be honest with you. But the terpene profile off of that is unique. It is only about a 6 to 8 week flowering time. Very, very fast flowering. Grows to maybe about 1.5 meters high. but yeah, it has a good solid structure from the very bottom to the very top of it. So yeah,
Amazing.
I particularly like the aroma of it as well. It kind of remind me of sunflowers a little bit. Kind of be one kind of aroma from it.
You're kind of like the I don't know if you've ever seen that TV show Som, about the guys that are training to be master sommeliers, but you know, they'll have a sip of a glass of wine and they're like, oh yeah, this is a Pinot from Santa Barbara in California, and it was clearly grown on a westerly facing mountain. Yeah, you know, and it's like you're like, sunflower seed, yeah, that's got to be a Sudanese landrace.
That's yeah. Well,
It's
look,
like-
it's like, yeah, look, particular varieties from around the world, they've got their own kind of unique smells. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you put a Thai variety in front of me, you put a Yunnan variety in front of me, and yeah, I'm kind of going, well, that's that, and it's like me. I'm always looking for that something I've never smelled before. You know, that's kind of what I'm always hunting. And it's like at the moment, it's like but now we've got more and more places around the world that are kind of opening up the cannabis, which
Yeah.
gives us the opportunity to start going into more of these places and looking to see what can find. There's
Yeah.
an awful lot of these spots as well where some of the most interesting varieties are a little bit war torn. So as you say, war torn. And to kind of, to get into those regions and to look around is not always as easy as we'd like it to be.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because you think for failed political reasons, everyone getting caught up in this, you know, stupid war on drugs, like you just think cannabis could actually, for some parts of the world, actually be a real pathway to economic recovery for some of those war-torn nations if they were to have you know, some oversight and guidance in establishing and really bringing to the global fore a cannabis industry in that country.
Yeah, like for instance, Mali. You see, you got Mali gold. Like that's once again, they're looking at bringing that as an actual national treasure, its own variety, which is an extremely potent, extremely effective medical variant. And you've also got Nepal then doing the exact same thing as well. So yeah, I like to see a lot of these countries that are kind of suffering in a couple of aspects to be able to take back what's theirs and be able to make a proper future out of it, really.
Yeah, totally.
I don't even think we need to go overseas. We could actually do a lot of economic recovery just in Australia.
As I said, I'd love to grow every different variety from north to the south, give everybody an opportunity. So
it's true. It's actually true.
Totally.
Well, Rob, I think we are running out of time, but it's been a fantastic chat, a very interesting one. It's always nice to have somebody on the show who's actually been around the planet for a while. We have a range of guests with different knowledge bases and skills, but it's nice to wax lyrical with you about some of the stuff that's come over from Europe. So
as much as Mitch and I would like to pretend like every guest we have on, we are, you know, waxing lyrical about the Sudanese cannabis scene, I'll be honest, it was the first time it's been mentioned on the show. So that's a well done to you for that first.
Look at it. Honestly, another, as I said, another absolutely fantastic place and people should really check out is Uruguay. Uruguay have got some really interesting things going on. They are really trying to push things forward. And yeah, it's like, as one of the people, it's like an underdeveloped Gold Coast. It's what the country's like.
Would it be
underdeveloped Gold Coast?
Underdeveloped Gold Coast.
Is that even possible?
So you got all the beauty but without the price.
That's very interesting. And is there a thriving medical scene over there, or?
There is, yes. So Uruguay federally legalized back in about 2012. So it was. So and you can pick it up to pharmacy, $1 a gram for your medical varieties as well. Then it was decriminalized back in 1978. So the whole country is accustomed to it. It's kind of built into the fabric of it. So it is it's properly integrated into that culture.
Sorry, just expanding on my note that I was writing before. So Cannabis and Uruguay 2024. Just note that down. Okay, Mitch, hope you're also
you missed Sudan.
Oh, Sudan. Indeed.
Just look, there's a lot of other interesting places as well that are kind of popping out some interesting things. But maybe we can do it for another conversation. Maybe you might want to do something on that another day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, we'll be following my genetics with interest, Rob, and would love to to catch up in person at some point. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us, lending your insights, your experience. One of the most knowledgeable people I think we've chatted to in the Australian scene. So we appreciate it.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, gents. I appreciate it.
All right.
Absolute pleasure.
No worries, Rob.
We might take you up on that second podcast. We've done it before and we're known to do it.
Yeah.
But until then, thanks for joining us.
Nice one, gents. Thank you for your
All right.
time.
Thanks, Rob.
mate.
Cheers.
Hey guys, Andrew Dallin here, Mitch Kurtz, and thanks for joining us for another episode of the AltMed podcast.
Make sure to hit like and subscribe to stay up to date with all that we have coming.
All things AltMed.
Yeah, that too.
Okay.